C.Kendall, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure and an honor to have you here.
Thank you very much. I've been seeing what you've been doing for a long time, and it's just awesome to jump on you and have this chat.
Thank you. I've been watching your videos and observing you for a while as well, and I think you have so much knowledge. Like some people may think, okay, he's a young guy. What does he know by now? My goodness, you know your stuff. You know your stuff inside out, upside down. It's always a pleasure to watch you. And, I'm 50 years old and I learn stuff from watching your videos. So thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Thank you for saying such. Often or not, I have had those sort of remarks, you're young, who the hell is this young kid? Sometimes I think to myself that a lot of people seem to forget that age doesn't really equal maturity or wisdom. But yeah, it's awesome to be jumping on here. And like you said, you learn things from me and I learn things from you. And I think that's what's important about this community, is that we all learn from each other. And that we're always learning, it's a continual process, really.
And it's amazing that in these times now we can learn from each other from such distances. Like we have such a cool resource that we can find the information that calls to us and we can learn together and evolve. It's awesome.
I couldn't agree more.
So just in case, I'm not sure if it's even possible, but just in case there's anyone watching right now that may not be familiar with who you are, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm C.Kendall. I'm a black magician on the left-hand path, I suppose. Although at times, I kind of figure out that I don't know exactly what path I'm on. I just hit the left-hand path and I call myself a black magician because that's what I've used for all these years, really. So I'm an author. I'm coming out with my first publication, which we'll be speaking about shortly here. I'm also a mentor and a black magician ritual for hire. I've been doing this for a long time now. Since the age of 8 years old, I've been into magic, and I got brought into magic under unique circumstances, I suppose. I actually died the day that I was born, and then I died afterwards when I was a toddler. So I've had two strokes with death, I suppose.
Wow.
And ever since then, I've been fascinated by what's beyond this physical world, spirituality, magic, and so forth. And I've been doing it ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really interesting. So not only once, but twice. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so I was born with a condition known as hydrocephalus, which is a fluid on the brain. And during my difficult childbirth with this condition too, I actually passed away and later on resuscitated. And when I was a toddler, they figured out that the fluid that was still in my head or brain, I suppose, it was still there. And I had an accident and something flared up again. And then I had a near-death experience all over again. So yeah, twice. It's well, nuts, I suppose.
Wow, well, you're definitely here for a reason. You came back twice because you have stuff to do, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So your book, you've just published a book. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? What can the person who reads it expect to find?
Yeah, of course. So it's a grimoire on necromancy. It's called The Necromancer, Path of the Descended Masters. So, talking about, this is going back to what we were talking about earlier, I had not only had a fascination with the spiritual world, with magic, metaphysics, and spirituality, but also with death, and what is beyond there and the dead. I had many experiences in my younger years with paranormal activity, hauntings, and such that I was just gravitated towards this. And I dived into necromancy quite foolishly. I suppose, like a lot of people, they just think they can call on these powers and, just sort of use them at will. But necromancy was an underlying system that I just didn't have the correct information on. And luckily enough, my cries were heard, and a spirit known as Anuas, this ascended master, came to my aid and really taught me this whole other form of necromantic sorcery and necromancy. And since then, I had begun my workings for years on end, and then accumulated such a vast amount of knowledge that in the end I had to put it into a tome and actually try to squeeze it in there, because in this grimoire it does cover working with Santa Muerte. I mean, I've got an altar right here, as well as Azrael, Asjahi, the goddess of death, working with jinns of death, demons of death. I mean, Nergal, Ereshkigal, you know, all the forms and aspects of death that have been around the years. And so that's what people can expect from this tome. It's not just a necromantic grimoire based on one subcurrent of death magic. It's covering the vastness of it all and giving people the exact knowledge and the exact know-how to walk this path. Because necromancy, for a very long time, has been misunderstood. And I like to clear up all the misconceptions in there. I put in there safeguards for people that want to walk this path, but fear the dead and fear the dying and fear the decaying. And I clear all that up within the grimoire too. And here we go. So that's what's heading everybody's way. I believe the 26th of January this month. I'll become a living god.
Yes, I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. I know I'm going to love it already just by what you've described. Are you ready to dive right into the questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
All right. I've got my wine, so cheers. Thank you for being here. Yes. How does one protect themselves from targeted vampirism and reclaim their own power with or without knowing precisely the source of the attack? Thank you, and hail to you, Connor.
Awesome question. So whoever asked that question, thank you. That's great. So secondly, I dived into vampirism quite heavily over the past couple of years. You know, I sort of had the thought on the process of it being a parasitic spirituality that I thought held no merit, but I couldn't have been any more wrong. I believe it's important for anybody in spirituality to have some knowledge, working knowledge on vampirism, because I think a lot of people think that, you know, vampirism is for those people that can't generate their own amount of energy properly, so they leech on other people like parasites. That's not entirely the case. A lot of this is done within baneful magic to have negative effects. Just vampirizing people's chakras, specific energy centers within them, will cause specific physical, mental, and emotional alterations within their being. So, for example, if you were to do the heart chakra, you know, you could really mess with people's connections to other people in their life, as well as their romance, as well as their abilities to deal with emotions, or just to overload emotions and cause a mental and emotional breakdown. So vampirism is not only a weapon, but it's a tool, because vampirism teaches you more about energy manipulation than any other practice that I personally found. And I dived into all different systems of energy work: psionics, radionics, tai chi, qigong. And I can tell you that vampirism allows you to take whatever energy, transmute it, and change it. And if you're looking to protect yourself against vampirism, it's perfectly beneficial to understand how vampirism works, so you can lock on to whatever energy signature that is. If you don't know the original source, or who sent you, or who's latched onto you, you can pick up on the residual energy, because everybody leaves an impression in your auric field. Sometimes we feel like, I feel a bit odd, or I feel a bit strange, you know, and it's usually due to a foreign energy signature that is not ours, or that is just harmful in nature. If you can pick up on that and you can lock in on that, then you can lock in onto the person. It's a matter of sort of tracing that back. So yeah, learn vampirism, learn how to transmute energy within you, because it's all well and good learning protections and working on sort of barriers and shields, but there are adept vampiric practices out there that allow you to break through shields no matter what, in certain traditions. So it's mostly important about learning how to transmute whatever negative energy is latched onto you. But if we're talking about protections, I had a case quite recently where somebody reached out to me and said that they were being bombarded by magical attacks. And here's a cool little thing to do, which is sort of like a mirror track. You can get yourself like a shoebox. This is very simple. get a shoebox and get 2 different mirrors on either side. And you can put a photograph of you on one end, and you can actually consecrate that or infuse that with your essence. And then whatever magical attack is coming onto you, you can bounce that back off onto the mirror on the other side, like one black candle for absorbing that essence. And sit down, meditate there, and just feel all the negativity within you, all the pain, all the whatever's been causing this attack, literally draining into that candle, draining into that photograph, draining into that side of the mirror, and then through that sort of reflection, return it to the original sender. So in many instances, you don't need to know who these people are. You can just send it back to wherever's came. And if you want to sort of go into a baneful technique, then you could also use within that some baneful herbs or concoctions to not only send that negativity back to the sender, but to send something else their way too.
Awesome. That is excellent advice. You covered that perfectly. If you want to learn how to protect yourself against psychic vampirism, learn vampirism. Absolutely. And I really like that spell that you gave at the end with the box and the mirrors. That is really, really clever. It's wicked. I love it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. It's quite basic, easy, and effective. And sometimes I think people seem to overlook certain rituals due to simplicity, but complexity just doesn't equal efficiency, really.
When did you realize that you were different from the rest of society? And did you have any early experiences that shifted you toward the left-hand path?
So it was during, of course, my birth and all this and all these other things were factors. But when I lived with my mother for a long time, I had no idea that my mother was also a witch. This was something that she was keeping from me, actually. And I didn't find out only until a couple of years ago. But due to certain circumstances, I was taken away from my mother and had to live with my father, a man who I did not know. And I suffered years of physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, and so on in this home with my father. And it was getting to the point where I was ready to take my own life. It was really dark. It was a very painful, traumatic experience. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, to be quite honest with you. And it was due to that.
Sorry that you went through that.
It's fine. I mean, I think this was sort of the thing that pushed me more into the left-hand path, having my power taken away from me at such a young age. And then the sense of lost power, you kind of will dive into extreme and intense ways of not only regaining that power, but sort of going overboard. And you do tend to overcompensate. And I noticed that, and many of us notice this in the left-hand path, that this is a reoccurring pattern, that people who come into black magic, a lot of them are victims, you know, whether it's from sexual assaults, you know, abusive relationships, whatever it is. And I always tell people that with black magic, I wasn't a victim and I wasn't just a survivor, but I was somebody who survived and somebody who thrived afterwards. Yeah. And now my past only seems to have made me stronger and given me a more of a resolve and more of a meaning to keep pushing forward in the left-hand path.
Yes, I've had a similar experience as well, so I can relate to that, and I agree.
Yeah, it is rather unfortunate that we have to go through these things sometimes, but you know, not everybody is going to have sort of an easy time in life. This is just some of the harsh realities. You know, there are some wicked people out there, some horrible people out there, and this world is unjust. You know, it is unjust, it is unfair, which is why I believe black magic was the perfect path for me. Not only was it a path to sort of deal with all the trauma and sort of break all the chains that were placed on me, but regain my own power, recreate my own world as I needed to. And with magic, I actually escaped that hellhole that I was living in, moved in with a better family, and you know, went from somebody who was supposedly a victim and somebody everybody looked at me like, you know, he's going to be a troubled young man. And of course there was trouble, but now I'm making moves and making strides that people never thought I would. And that's all thanks to the Infernal Empire and the Sorceress works that I've done over the past couple of years.
Yeah, awesome. Do you mix the nature current with Lucifer to try and heal people?
So I love Lucifer. Everybody who knows me knows this. I love this entity primarily because he, at least in my experiences and in my personal experiences, of course everybody's going to have a different experience with different entities, But when it comes to Lucifer, to me, he represents the embodiment of perfect balance. You know, he's the Promethean fire, he's the light bringer, but he's also a devil of the infernal empire, and he's the initiator into the dark secrets of the Cliffothic side. So he has this light and dark aspect about him. However, he is deeply rooted also into nature, and he's been associated with many deities that are associated with nature too. So, for example, there is an entity called Atar, a war god. I believe it's a ram skull or an antelope skull. I could be mistaken right now. I can't really remember. But he most definitely does have those connections with nature. Same with his aspect that people associate him with Pan. Now, I'm not associating him with these aspects, but he does have a nature aspect. Now, what I'll do is, with any healing work, I'll actually try to figure out the problem before I start the ritual. I think that's like number one. People just do general healing rituals, like a candle, say some prayers or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but it's very good that you diagnose the problem first before you go in fixing it. Because there's no sense in somebody, for example, bringing somebody in for surgery, cut them open and be like, let's see what we're dealing with. You know, you could have cut open the wrong thing, or you could be doing the wrong thing. So my healing techniques are very unique depending on who I'm working on. A cool thing to do is actually combine demonic spirits with angelic spirits. So Marbas and Raphael, put them in a healing ritual together, and it has profound effects. I've used Lucifer's light aspect within nature to heal things that are mostly of the heart and of the mind. And I'll go out just into the woods and I'll call on his lighter aspect as the light bringer, the Promethean fire, the fire that burns anything that is holding you back. And then within nature, sort of that earthly current, you know, you can plant the seed for your growth moving forward.
Awesome. Awesome. I recently was watching a YouTube video, and someone was saying that they feel that drawing in angelic, and you've probably heard this before, so angelic and the demonic forces into a working together is dangerous, but you say that you have done it with success. So, and you know, I've heard other people say this as well. So it's just interesting to hear different people's experiences. I'm always fascinated to hear. And that's awesome that you get it to work. How do you feel about that sort of school of thought when people say you can't do that?
I think people are starting to, and are still, unfortunately, looking at these entities only with the mythological lens, I suppose. You know, the mythology of Christian law, Islamic law, or Judaic law, because within these scriptures that you think angel, good, demon, bad, and it's as simple as that. It's as black and white as that within these traditions. But you know, good and evil, as far as I've seen it, are man-made concepts, and they don't even apply to the animal kingdom. They don't apply to most spiritual systems that I've seen, and these entities don't seem to really bother with it either. Now, on the topic of how do I see angels and demons working together, I've had success with it. I know many magicians had success with it. For example, Asira Kraba, a good friend of mine, has done it. I believe EA's touched on this. JS Garrett's touched on this, I believe so as well. It's mostly about these entities and their energy. Sometimes certain energies don't go well together, but that's not due to the fact that one is demonic or angelic. Sometimes it could be the fact of this entity's vibration is very, for example, intense, like aggressive, and highly sexual. But then if you come in with an entity who's sort of motherly, you know, and more laid back and relaxing, do these energies go well together? So I think it's mostly in the terms of energy and frequency. But as from what I've seen through personal experience, summoning these entities in a ritualized setting, they don't seem to have no problem at all. A lot of the time, they don't seem to acknowledge each other. They only seem to acknowledge the operator that's in the ritual, you know? So I don't know if it's a play on subjective reality here. I'm not entirely sure, but I just think that as long as these entities are okay working with each other, if you ask them and they're okay with it, then I don't see what the problem is.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I feel sometimes people get lost with generalized blanket statements, like a one size fits everything, and they sort of lose, well, they get that narrow mindset that we're trying to break away from on this path. Yeah.
And until next time, I wish you dark and wild blessings.